Each Nature Conservancy preserve has its own unique features that support our overall conservation mission. For the Hamer Woodlands at Cove Mountain Preserve, it's along the Kittatinny Ridge, which is a critical migratory corridor for us. It's a very important landscape in Pennsylvania. With our Cove Mountain Preserve, we've been able to put in the final puzzle piece of a 14-mile protected corridor of ridge from Marysville to Duncannon is all now protected. Throughout that whole landscape, we now have that as protected forest land that will not be developed. There's sustainable forest management going on that we can continue to create wildlife habitat and support the migratory species that use the Kittatinny Ridge.
This is really special. Right here, we're on the Kittatinny Ridge, which is, I kind of describe it as a migratory superhighway. This is a ridge that connects a lot of the breeding grounds of eastern North America to the migratory paths that these birds are taking in the spring and also in the fall.
When we first acquired this property several years ago, there was a lot of non-native invasive species like tree of heaven, and we removed those invasive species to allow native trees such as tulip poplars and oaks to become established. But what also happened when we removed those trees and we let more sunlight into the forest, we saw the proliferation of new invasive species like mile-a-minute and Japanese stiltgrass. In our forest management plan, our strategy was to use herbicides to control these non-native invasive plants. When you have populations as extensive as this, hand pulling or mowing just isn't feasible. So for our herbicides, we're going to use a selective herbicide that actually prevents seed from germinating. That way we can really just target the non-native invasive species and not be harming the existing seedlings and shrubs that are here. At the same time, we will also be doing some supplemental tree planting to introduce new species like viburnums or dogwoods that provide that food that the migratory birds need, increase our overall diversity, and then also create a more resilient forest that can continue to naturally adapt to climate change impacts.
Active forest management is really important, especially in a state like Pennsylvania, because when we take a hands-off approach, you can have issues like invasive species come in or other forest pests or diseases come in and really dramatically change the forest structure.
Today we planted eastern red cedar, flowering dogwood, and northern bayberry. The work's important because ultimately the narrative of this place would not have changed if we didn't have an underplanting, because there's really no seed source available from native hardwoods, so a supplemental planting was needed ultimately.
The Hamer Woodlands at Cove Mountain Preserve is located within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Specifically, it's right along the Susquehanna River. And the Susquehanna River is the largest tributary to the Chesapeake Bay. So we have lots of efforts throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed to improve and maintain good water quality. Because we're so close to Harrisburg, this preserve gets a lot of recreational use. We've had a lot of trail building happening over the last few years. The Susquehanna Appalachian Trail Club has donated literally thousands of hours to improving our trails, and they've been a great partner for us.
In addition to this planting, we'll be putting some signs in, and it's going to be a really great educational opportunity, I think, because as you stand up on that ridge and you look out, you can see the rest of the Kittatinny Ridge. A ridge like this is a really important place for birds, and I think that folks that come to this site are going to see that.
There's very high development pressure along the Kittatinny Ridge. We see other parts of the ridge become developed with housing communities. And by purchasing this land, we're protecting it as forest land forever. And we can continue to use this preserve and the surrounding landscape as that migratory corridor.